My husband got my best friend pregnant while I was away and planning a surprise for him. But what I did after left everyone stunned. Stay with me till the end, because this is not just another story of betrayal. It's how I turned the worst heartbreak of my life into my biggest moment of strength. And if this story touches you in any way, don't forget to show some love by supporting our channel, liking, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Aaliyah Carter. I'm in my late 20s, and I work as a nurse. People always tell me I'm caring and too thoughtful for my own good, and maybe they're right. I loved my life, or at least I thought I did. I had a husband, Marcus Carter, who everyone swore was the definition of a loyal man. Marcus is in his early 30s, handsome, confident, and he manages a local gym. He's the type of guy people instantly trust, smiles at everyone, always cracking jokes, always the good one. And then there was my best friend, Danielle Price. She and I had been inseparable since high school. Danielle was witty, stylish, the friend everyone wanted around. We celebrated birthdays together, leaned on each other during tough times, and promised nothing could ever come between us. If you had asked me back then, I would have told you I was living the perfect dream. Married to a man I loved and blessed with a best friend who was like my sister. That's why I wanted to do something special. Our wedding anniversary was coming up, and I decided to surprise Marcus with something he'd never forget, a vow renewal. I wanted him to know that after everything we'd been through, my love for him hadn't faded one bit. So while he thought I was just visiting family, I secretly traveled to Atlanta to set up the plans. I met with event planners, picked out a venue, and even arranged for close friends and family to fly in. It was supposed to be a beautiful moment, a way to remind us both of the love that had built our marriage. Those weeks away were filled with excitement. I remember lying in bed at night, smiling to myself, imagining Marcus's face when he saw what I had put together. I thought about Danielle too, and how proud she'd be when she found out. She always told me how lucky I was to have Marcus, and how inspiring our love was. Little did I know, while I was planning the most romantic surprise of my life, both of them were busy writing a betrayal I could never have seen coming. If only I had known then that the people I trusted most, my husband and my best friend, were already destroying the world I thought was so perfect. While I was away in Atlanta, things started to feel different, though at first I didn't want to admit it. Marcus and I used to talk every night before bed. He'd ask me about my day, tell me little stories about what happened at the gym, and sometimes even fall asleep on the phone with me. But now his calls were shorter. His replies to my texts were clipped, just a yeah or okay, as if I was disturbing him. When I asked what was going on, he would say he was busy at work, that the gym had been crazy with new clients. At first, I believed him. He was a manager, after all, and I knew how dedicated he was to his job. But something in his tone made me uneasy, like there was a wall between us that hadn't been there before. I brushed it off, telling myself I was just overthinking. After all, I was away, and sometimes distance makes people act strange. But then Danielle started acting odd too. Danielle was the kind of friend who couldn't go a day without checking in. She'd text me about her outfits, the funny things that happened at her office, or even the shows she was binge-watching. But while I was in Atlanta, her messages came less and less. Some days she wouldn't text at all, which was completely unlike her. When I called, she'd rush off the phone, saying she was tired or had errands. I told myself maybe she was just busy, but deep down it felt off. I tried to focus on my plans instead. I had already put a deposit down on the venue, picked the flowers, and started putting together the guest list. This vow renewal was supposed to be perfect, and I kept reminding myself that I was doing it because I loved Marcus, because he deserved to feel celebrated. Still, the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. Then little details began to stack up. Marcus sent me a selfie one night, claiming he was home watching the game. But he looked too polished, too done up. His shirt was pressed, his haircut fresh, and there was a glint in his eye that made me wonder where he had really been. Another time, he told me he was working late at the gym, but when I called to say goodnight, he sounded out of breath, like he had been rushing to answer. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. I didn't want to be the kind of wife who doubted her husband over small things. So I kept quiet, swallowed my suspicions, and convinced myself it was nothing. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew something wasn't right. The man who once couldn't go a day without showing me love now felt like a stranger on the other end of the line, and my best friend, the one person I could always count on, suddenly felt miles away, even though she lived just down the street from my house. When I finally came back home, I decided not to tell Marcus in advance. I thought it would be the perfect chance to surprise him with the tickets I had bought for a weekend getaway. In my head, I imagined his big smile when he saw me standing there with the envelopes in my hand, proof that I had been thinking about him the whole time I was away. I let myself into the house quietly, wanting to catch him off guard in the sweetest way. At first glance, everything looked normal. The living room was tidy, the TV remote on the table, and Marcus's sneakers kicked off near the door. But as I set my bag down and bent to pick up a magazine from the floor, something small and shiny caught my eye under the couch. I reached for it and pulled out a gold hoop earring. It wasn't mine. I don't even wear that style. My heart skipped. I told myself maybe it belonged to a relative or maybe Danielle had been over. But something about the way it was half hidden made my stomach twist. When Marcus walked through the door that evening, his surprise at seeing me was different from what I had expected. Instead of joy, there was a flicker of shock, almost like he had been caught off guard. He hugged me, sure, but it felt forced, his body stiff against mine. I brushed it off and handed him the tickets, telling him how excited I was for us to have a romantic getaway. He smiled, but his eyes didn't match the smile. Then there was Danielle. Normally, she would be the first one to call me the second I got back, wanting to hear about my trip and fill me in on everything I had missed. But instead, she avoided me. When I texted her, she claimed she was swamped with work. When I asked to meet up for coffee, she said she wasn't feeling well. It was excuse after excuse, and it didn't feel like her at all. The more she pulled away, the heavier that earring weighed on my mind. Marcus wasn't any better. He kept his phone close to him, and every time it buzzed, he'd glance at it quickly and either silence it or walk into another room. Nights used to be our time: dinner, laughter, and the comfort of each other. Now he avoided intimacy, saying he was too tired or stressed from work. I'd reach out to hold his hand, and he would pull away without even realizing it. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, but the cracks were showing, no matter how hard I tried to ignore them. The house felt different, colder somehow. My best friend was avoiding me, my husband was slipping away, and that single earring under the couch sat in the back of my mind like a silent warning I didn't yet want to face. One afternoon, while I was running errands, I stopped by the medical plaza to pick up some supplies for work. I wasn't supposed to be there long, just in and out. But as I walked toward the front desk, I froze. Sitting in one of the chairs in the waiting area was Danielle. She had her head down, scrolling on her phone, but when she looked up and saw me, her face drained of color. "Danielle," I said, my voice unsure. She jumped up so quickly it startled me. "Aaliyah. Oh, hey, I have to go." She clutched her purse tight against her side, avoiding my eyes. "Here. At the doctor's?" I asked, trying to sound casual. But she was already halfway toward the exit. "Yeah, just nothing big. I'll call you later, okay?" she mumbled before rushing out the door. I stood there, confused, watching her leave. My best friend, the girl who normally told me everything, even what she ate for lunch, had just brushed me off like a stranger. Something didn't sit right. I could have let it go, but my feet carried me closer to the receptionist's desk. That's when I heard it. Danielle's voice floated back through the doorway. She hadn't made it out yet, apparently stopping to confirm something at the counter. "Yes, I just need to pick up the prescription for the prenatal vitamins," she said softly. The words hit me like a punch in the chest. Prenatal vitamins. My ears rang as the receptionist confirmed her order. Pregnant. Danielle was pregnant. I stood frozen, the world spinning around me. My best friend pregnant. And in that moment, the pieces I had been trying not to connect slammed together with brutal clarity. The sudden distance in her texts. The excuses. The earring under my couch. The way Marcus avoided me. The nervous glances at his phone. The coldness in our bed. It all made sense. I staggered back toward the door, my heart racing, trying not to let the receptionist see the tears building in my eyes. Outside, the sun was shining, people were walking by, cars were honking on the street. Life was moving as if nothing had changed. But inside me, everything was shattering. I thought about Marcus's polished selfies, the way he swore he was busy at the gym. I thought about Danielle, the friend who once swore she'd never betray me. And now, the image of her standing in a doctor's office, casually ordering prenatal vitamins, was burned into my mind. I didn't need anyone to spell it out. I knew with every part of me that the child growing inside her wasn't some stranger's. It was Marcus's. My husband. The realization was so heavy, I felt like my knees might give out. My world, the one I thought was so solid, had cracked wide open in the middle of a crowded street, and there was no way to pretend I hadn't just seen the truth. That night, I couldn't keep it inside any longer. I waited until Marcus came home from work, still in his gym uniform, sweat shining on his forehead. He smiled at me, that same smile that once made me feel safe, but now it just made my stomach turn. "We need to talk," I said firmly. He dropped his bag by the door, raising an eyebrow. "About what?" I stood there, arms crossed, my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. "About Danielle." For a split second, I saw panic flash across his face, but he quickly masked it. "What about her?" he asked, forcing a laugh. I took a deep breath. "She's pregnant." The words hung in the air like a blade. Marcus froze. His lips parted, but no sound came out. His eyes darted away from mine, and that was all the confirmation I needed. "Marcus," I whispered, my voice cracking. "It's yours, isn't it?" He rubbed his forehead, pacing the room. "Aaliyah, listen, it wasn't like that. One night, we had a little too much to drink, and things just slipped." "Slipped?" I repeated, my voice rising. My chest burned as I stared at him. "You don't just slip into my best friend. How long has this been going on?" He tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. His silence said everything. My hands trembled as I pointed at him. "It wasn't just once, was it?" He dropped his gaze, shoulders slumping. "No," he admitted finally. "It wasn't just once." My whole body went numb. The man I married, the one I had trusted with my life, had been betraying me in the worst way possible. And not with a stranger, but with Danielle. My best friend. The girl who stood by my side during my wedding, who held my hand through heartbreaks, who swore we were sisters for life. The next day, I cornered Danielle. I couldn't let her hide behind lies any longer. When she saw me walking toward her outside her apartment, her face turned pale. "Danielle," I said, my voice shaking but strong. "Just tell me the truth." She swallowed hard, looking down at the ground. "Aaliyah, I'm sorry. Was it just once?" I asked, hoping for some small mercy. Tears filled her eyes as she shook her head. "No, it went on for months. We didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. I swear I never wanted to hurt you." Her words cut deeper than any knife. Months. They had carried on behind my back for months, while I trusted them both with everything. I couldn't breathe. My chest ached, and my vision blurred with tears. Everything I believed in, my marriage, my friendship, my foundation, collapsed right there. I had lost not just a husband, but the sister I thought I had in Danielle. And in that moment, standing between their lies and my broken heart, I realized my world would never be the same again. After the truth came out, I thought I would explode. I thought I'd scream, throw things, maybe even kick Marcus out that same night. But instead, something inside me shifted. The anger didn't come in fire, it came in ice. I grew quiet, cold, and strangely calm. Maybe it was the shock, or maybe it was the nurse in me, used to keeping composure even when everything feels like chaos. I watched Marcus fumble over his apologies, swearing it was a mistake, swearing he still loved me, swearing he wanted our marriage. My best friend was pregnant with his child, yet here he was, begging me not to leave. The old me, the one who believed in fixing everything, wanted to cry and fall apart. But the new me? She had a plan. So I looked him in the eyes and said softly, "If you're honest with me, maybe we can work through this." His shoulders dropped, relief washing over his face. He grabbed my hands, tears in his eyes, promising to do whatever it took. I nodded, pretending to believe him. Inside, though, I felt something much sharper. I had already decided. I wasn't going to scream or fight. I was going to finish what I started. The vow renewal I had been planning would still happen, but it wouldn't be about love anymore. It would be about truth. In the days that followed, I acted like a forgiving wife. I cooked his favorite meals, asked about his day, even smiled when he kissed my cheek. He clung to me more than ever, convinced I was choosing him over my pain. He thought he was winning me back, but really, I was just setting the stage. Danielle, on the other hand, kept her distance. She didn't call, didn't stop by, didn't even try to explain herself again. I could tell she was ashamed, but I also knew she was waiting to see if Marcus would choose her in the end. That thought used to break me, but now it only fueled me. If she wanted to play second choice, fine. But both of them were going to learn that betrayal has a cost. At night, I lay awake next to Marcus, staring at the ceiling while he snored. My mind replayed every lie, every excuse, every moment I ignored my instincts. And now, Instead of drowning in heartbreak, I felt my strength building. He thought I was weak for forgiving him, but what he didn't realize was that forgiveness was my disguise. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to argue. I was going to let him walk straight into the biggest surprise of his life, the one I had been planning all along. Except now, the gift wouldn't be love. It would be his truth exposed in front of everyone he cared about. The day of the vow renewal came, and the hall was filled with friends, family, and smiling faces. White flowers lined the tables, soft music floated in the background, and everyone was dressed to celebrate love. To them, this was a beautiful occasion, a couple renewing their promises, proving that love could last. They had no idea what was about to unfold. Marcus stood at the front, looking sharp in his tailored suit, grinning at everyone who came to congratulate us. He believed this day was about us, about moving past everything. He thought I had forgiven him. He thought he had won me back. Watching him beam so proudly made my stomach churn, but I held my composure. I had rehearsed this moment over and over in my head. When it was my turn to speak, I took the microphone with a steady hand. I smiled at the crowd, then turned to Marcus. I wanted tonight to be special, I began, my voice calm and sweet. I wanted everyone to see how strong our love really is. So I wrote down everything I've been feeling. People leaned in, smiling warmly, expecting a heartfelt speech. Marcus nodded at me, his eyes soft with relief, believing this was the proof of my forgiveness. But as I pulled out a stack of folded papers, his smile faltered. I cleared my throat and continued. When you're married, you expect honesty. You expect loyalty. And when that trust is broken, it shatters everything. Some of you may not know this, but while I was away planning this very celebration, my husband was busy creating memories of his own, with my best friend. Gasps erupted in the room. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marcus stiffened, his face draining of color. I unfolded the papers. I didn't come here to accuse without proof. So I'll let Marcus and Danielle's own words speak for themselves. Then I began to read. Text after text, message after message, him telling her how beautiful she was, how he couldn't stop thinking about her, how being with her made him feel alive. I read Danielle's replies too, the ones where she talked about how guilty she felt, yet couldn't stay away. Each word sliced through the room like a knife. The whispers grew louder, people shaking their heads in disbelief. Some covered their mouths. Others glared at Marcus. He rushed toward me, hissing, "Aaliyah, stop this, not here." But I stepped back, holding the microphone higher. "It's too late, Marcus," I said firmly. "Everyone deserves to know the truth." Danielle, seated near the back, broke into tears. She bolted up from her chair, clutching her purse, and ran out of the hall. All eyes turned back to Marcus, whose perfect image crumbled in an instant. He reached for me, begging me to stop, but the damage was already done. I handed the microphone back and stood tall, my heart pounding with both pain and power. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt in control. The room was still buzzing from Aaliyah's shocking revelation, the air thick with whispers and gasps. Marcus stood frozen, his face pale, his hand still half raised as if he could pull her words back into her chest before they reached the crowd. Danielle was already gone, fleeing in shame, but the damage clung to him like a second skin. Aaliyah, however, wasn't trembling. She wasn't broken. She was radiant in her calmness, and every eye in the room was fixed on her. She took a breath, steady and deliberate, before raising her voice again. "And just so there's no confusion," she said, her tone firm but free of anger, "I am not standing here begging for my husband to change or my friend to apologize. I am standing here to tell you all, I'm done." Marcus's head snapped toward her, panic etched across his face. "Aaliyah, wait, please don't do this here. We can fix this. We can talk." But she didn't flinch. She turned back toward the crowd, her voice sharper now, slicing through the murmurs. "What Marcus doesn't know is that while he was busy betraying me, I was quietly making my own plans. I already filed for divorce. The papers are signed, the process is underway. And every cent of my hard-earned money? It's no longer tied to him. I've moved everything into my own account." Gasps rippled again, but this time they carried a different weight. Some of the guests leaned forward, eyes wide with admiration. Others shook their heads at Marcus, disgust dripping from their faces. Aaliyah continued, her composure unshakable. "I spent years believing in a future with a man who saw me as disposable. Years standing by someone who couldn't even honor me in my absence. But today I thank him. I thank him for showing me who he truly is before I wasted another decade of my life. Marcus reached for her arm, his voice cracking. "You can't mean this. Aaliyah, please, think about everything we've built." She pulled away gently but firmly, her eyes locking on his with icy clarity. "What we built was a lie. And I don't build on lies." For the first time all evening, the crowd shifted, choosing sides. Aaliyah's mother stood up, moving toward her daughter, pride glowing on her face. Several cousins and friends joined her, hugging her, whispering encouragement. Others openly glared at Marcus, muttering words like coward and disgrace. Marcus was left standing alone in the center, the very man who thought he could have both loyalty and betrayal without consequence. Aaliyah handed the microphone back to the event coordinator and lifted her chin high. "This celebration isn't about a vow renewal anymore," she said. "It's about my freedom, my fresh start, and I intend to walk into it with power." The hall erupted, some clapping, some shaking their heads, but no one indifferent. And as Aaliyah walked away, family and friends following her lead, Marcus stood surrounded by empty chairs and judgmental eyes. She didn't look back once. Word of the vow renewal disaster spread through town like wildfire. Within days, the story had traveled from the rented hall to office corridors, church pews, and neighborhood gatherings. People whispered Marcus's name with disgust, shaking their heads at the man who betrayed his wife with her closest friend. He tried to act as though nothing had changed, showing up at work with forced confidence, but even his colleagues pulled away. Lunch invitations disappeared, conversations fell silent when he entered a room, and his boss called him in to discuss professionalism, after a client hinted they didn't want to be represented by that man from the scandal. His reputation, once polished, was now cracked beyond repair. Danielle fared no better. Pregnancy already weighed heavy on her body, but the burden of shame made it worse. She avoided grocery stores at busy hours, hid behind oversized coats, and kept her head down in waiting rooms. The women she once laughed with now crossed the street to avoid her. Even Marcus, the man she had gambled everything on, refused to stand by her side. He told her he needed time, that he wasn't ready for another child, leaving her to navigate doctors' visits alone. Nights grew long and lonely, her phone quiet, her heart hollow. She had thought she would be chosen, but instead she was discarded, a secret Marcus wished he could bury. Meanwhile, Aaliyah carried herself with a quiet grace that surprised even those closest to her. After the shocking public reveal, many expected her to lash out, to make a spectacle of Marcus and Danielle at every chance. But she didn't. At work, she smiled politely, focusing on her tasks. At social events, she laughed lightly, never once mentioning Marcus's name unless asked directly. And when asked, she simply replied, "That chapter of my life is over." Her restraint only amplified the community's respect for her. People admired not just her courage in exposing the truth, but her dignity in the aftermath. Old friends reached out to her, some apologizing for not noticing the cracks sooner, others offering her new opportunities. Whether it was connections, business leads, or simple companionship. She began to rebuild, not out of spite, but out of a genuine desire to move forward. Slowly, her life took on a different rhythm, one that was lighter and freer without the weight of lies. Marcus watched this shift with growing bitterness. The more Aaliyah flourished, the more he withered. He couldn't understand how she had turned the community to her side while he was left standing alone. But deep down, he knew the truth. She had faced betrayal with courage, while he had chosen weakness and deceit. And so, while Danielle struggled in isolation and Marcus sank under the weight of his ruined reputation, Aaliyah stood taller than ever. The community saw her not as a victim, but as a woman of strength, a symbol of resilience. She had walked through the fire and emerged untouchable. Months had passed since the vow renewal that turned into a storm. By now, Aaliyah had built a new rhythm for herself, one that no longer revolved around Marcus or the shadow of Danielle's betrayal. She found a cozy apartment downtown, small but filled with warmth, plants by the windows, soft light in the evenings, and walls painted in colors she chose just for herself. For the first time in years, the space felt like her own, untouched by anyone else's lies. Nights were peaceful. She no longer waited for a man who came home late with excuses. Instead, she poured tea, curled up with a book, and felt content. It was at the hospital, during long shifts, that she started noticing Jordan Mitchell. He was a fellow nurse, steady-handed and calm, with an easy smile that made the stress of the job a little lighter. At first, their conversations were casual, about patients, schedules, or the cafeteria's terrible coffee. But over time, she realized he was different. He listened, not with half an ear, but with his full attention. He asked about her day and genuinely cared about the answer. When he invited her for dinner one evening, she hesitated, her heart still tender from the wounds Marcus had left. But something about Jordan's kindness felt safe. So she said yes. Dinner turned into late-night talks. Late-night talks turned into quiet walks after shifts, and soon, she found herself smiling in a way she hadn't in years. Jordan wasn't flashy or manipulative. He was simply present, respectful, and steady. For Aaliyah, that was more precious than anything Marcus had ever given her. Meanwhile, Danielle's life had taken a harsher turn. She gave birth to a baby girl, but the joy she might have expected was swallowed by loneliness. Marcus wasn't there. He had lost too much. His friends no longer trusted him, his job performance sank, and money slipped through his fingers faster than he could hold it. Bitter and broke, he drifted further away from both Danielle and the child. Danielle, who once dreamed of stealing Aaliyah's place, now found herself alone, a single mother carrying the weight of a choice she could never undo. Aaliyah heard whispers of their struggles, but didn't involve herself. She had no need to. Life had a way of taking care of things without her lifting a finger. Instead, she focused on her own healing, her own growth, and the steady presence of someone who valued her. One evening, as she sat on her balcony with Jordan's hand resting gently over hers, she thought back on everything. The lies, the betrayal, the heartbreak, it had all nearly destroyed her. But now, she could see clearly, betrayal wasn't just an ending, it was a gift. It tore away the falsehoods and revealed the truth, making space for real love and real peace. She didn't just survive Marcus and Danielle. She rose from the wreckage, stronger than before, while they were left to live in the ruins they created. And that, she realized, was the sweetest closure of all. Do you think Aaliyah made the right choice by cutting Marcus and Danielle out of her life completely, or should she have tried to forgive them? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really like to hear your perspective. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and drop a like so you never miss the next one.